Introduce Dr. Christina Enzmann, and thank you very much for being here and presenting for MAP's Conversation with a Doc. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you. And when once Judy comes back, she can we can give her again the show. But for now, I'm just going to take over. So, good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for being here tonight, and thank you for the Maryland Association for Parkinson Support for bringing us together. Well, I can only imagine how much it took just to show up here tonight. My name is Dr. Christina Enzmann. I'm a gynecologist and a menopause specialist. And tonight we are going to talk about something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. Not the person you're caring for, but you, the caregiver, your brain, your hormones, and your energy. And how to protect all three while you're pouring yourself into that person that you love. So let me tell you just a little bit about who am I. I'm a board-certified gynecologist and a certified menopause practitioner. And I have training in functional medicine and nutritional endocrinology. I earned my degree, medical doctor, and my PhD at University of Hamburg. That's Germany. And I did my residency right here where the Parkinson Association is at Sinai Hospital in Baltimore. Life brought me to the US. That was really not my planning. But here I am since over 20 years. So my whole practice is built around midlife women's health, stress physiology, hormones, and what I call metabolic resilience. In plain language, that means how your body holds up under pressure and how we keep it from breaking down. So I practice root cause medicine, which means I'm always less interested in silencing symptoms and more interested in asking, why is this happening in the first place? And the women I see who are running on empty, who can't figure out why they are so exhausted, are often indeed caregivers. And that's why this talk exists. And I want to let you know, I know here are also men, and while I'm a gynecologist, all these things I'm going to talk about how to protect your brain and how to protect your energy, that really also applies. Everything applies to men. Only when I really talk about the female hormones, that's only, pertinent to the women. Even there, I'm going to also say something in terms of testosterone. So there's a saying you've probably heard. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And it's a lovely thought. But I want to add the part nobody tells you. Because no one told you how fast the cup is actually draining. Because the real story of caregiving in midlife is that nobody wants you. There is no orientation, no training day. One morning, you're a wife, a partner, a husband, a daughter, and the next day, you're managing medications, appointments, mobility, moods, finances, and your own life on top of all of that. And the cup just empties day after day, quietly. Until one day you realize you can barely remember the last time you felt like yourself. And tonight is about that cup, how fast it's draining, why, and most importantly, how to start filling it back up. And let's start with a number because I think it matters that you hear it. 1 in 5 US adults is a caregiver. That's over 53 million Americans. 53 million. And I say that not to overwhelm you, but to do the opposite, to remind you that whatever you're feeling in this role, you're not alone in it and you're not doing it wrong. And within that huge group, there's a subset carrying an especially heavy load. And that's who I want to talk about next, because Parkinson's caregiving is its own particularly kind of marathon. Parkinson's caregiving is what I call a hidden crisis. Let me show you what the research says, and I suspect some of these numbers are going to feel very familiar to you. First, the average Parkinson caregiver spends more than 30 hours a week providing unpaid care. 30 plus hours, that's a full-time job, layered on top of whatever else your life already asks of you. Second, 40% of caregivers experience clinical depression or anxiety. That's double the rate of people who aren't caregiving. And third, 60% of caregivers report a significant decline in their own health within 2 years. So within 2 years, more than half of us are measurably less healthy than when we started. And fourth, the high burden that the caregivers have increases their risk of cardiovascular events. So, no, I don't share these to frighten you. I share them because for years, so many women and men have, in my practice, women have sat across me feeling like the exhaustion was a personal failing. And it's not a failing, it's really biology and it's measurable. And once we can measure something, we can do something about it. And that's the whole point, really, of tonight. So how does it happen? Well, burnout doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps up on us, and it tends to move through 4 stages. See if you recognize any of these. Stage 1, you have enthusiasm and you're overcommitted. This is the I can handle this phase. You step up, you're capable, you're organized. You love this person and you think you're the only one who can do this work, and you throw yourself into it completely. There's even a kind of like an adrenaline rush to it. Stage 2, well, stagnation and creeping exhaustion. The adrenaline has long faded. You start ignoring your own needs. You're skipping meals, canceling your own appointments, telling yourself you'll rest once things calm down. But things just don't calm down. We know that. Stage 3, frustration and resentment. And this is where physical symptoms start to emerge. You feel guilty for being irritable. You snap, and then you hate yourself for snapping. Your body starts sending signals: the headaches, the poor sleep, the gut issues, maybe the weight gain. Stage 4 is what we then in functional medicine call like a burnout, right? So we don't have this term in conventional medicine, but it really describes it very well. There comes apathy, there's some detachment. Immune collapse, meaning you just suddenly get more sick more frequently. It's like a little genuine health crisis. This is where the caregiver ends up either in the hospital or they start to see their primary care physician and suddenly have many issues at once, and they're all surprised where they suddenly came from. So here's what I want you to take from this. If you recognize yourself somewhere on that list, well, that's good. It's not bad news. That's awareness, because you can interrupt this process at any stage. And everything I'm going to give you tonight is designed to move back up that list, not down it. So let's talk about what's actually happening inside your body, because I think understanding the mechanism is genuinely freeing. When you know it's not just you, it's chemistry, something that can be even relaxing understanding. So when stress becomes chronic, not a bad day, but really month after month, 4 things start to happen. First, that cortisol, like that stress hormone that's supposed to rise when something happens and go back down, it stays elevated. So cortisol is your main stress hormone, and it's wonderful in short bursts. But when it never comes down, it disrupts your sleep, your memory, and your metabolism. So here's the weight gain. This is why you can be exhausted and still lie awake at 3 a.m. in the morning, because your body is so chemically wired to stay on alert at that point. Then inflammatory markers rise. Chronic stress is unfortunately tremendously inflammatory. And inflammation accelerates aging and disease. So a sign of inflammation can be your joint aches, your gut issues, your headaches, but also your increased cholesterol or high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease. And third, and this one matters enormously for the women in this room, your sex hormones decline faster. And this actually applies to the men too. It's just they don't have something like menopause. For them, it goes a little slower. So for women, what's happening is estrogen and progesterone, they drop more sharply under chronic stress, which might mean you might lose your menstrual cycle even earlier, not just because you're in true menopausal age. And all menopausal symptoms that you might already have or know is going to be intensified under chronic stress, particularly the sleep issues and the hot flashes. And fourth, your blood sugars start to go on a roller coaster. That's causing you another whole amount of symptoms. It gives you fatigue, the brain fog, the afternoon crash when you have eaten and you just want to put your head on the table, and also the stubborn weight gain, especially around your midsection. So if you've been feeling foggy, wired but tired, puffy, and older than you really think it should be by your years, it's not your imagination. It's a biological response to an unrelenting load you have been carrying. However, every one of these things can be influenced. So here's the piece that often gets missed because most caregivers are also women in midlife. And that's what I usually call a perfect storm. It's a really double whammy for us women. On one side, everything menopause is already doing to us, right? We have declining estrogen and progesterone. There is a rising cortisol for all of us because the body realizes there is a hormonal change and it doesn't like it. So we already have baseline disrupted sleep. We have some cognitive changes. We have word finding issues and the brain fog and the increased visceral fat. So these are already things we are battling with, and it often has to do already with an increased cortisol level. So now everything caregiving piles on top. There comes the chronic stress. So, and it does that. The cortisol literally steals the raw materials from our body we would otherwise use, for example, to produce progesterone or also testosterone. So, cortisol and our sex hormones have the same precursor hormones. So, if the body needs to keep us alive, creating cortisol, it's going to cut that off from our sex hormones. So, it's a real biochemical trade-off. Our body prioritizes survival hormones over our relaxing sex hormones. To this, we add the chronic sleep deprivation and no time for self-care or exercise. And then comes emotional exhaustion, that really compounds the physical fatigue. So you have the menopause pushing down on one side and caregiving pushing down additionally. And you're in the middle wondering why you feel like a completely different person than you were 5 years ago. So you're not imagining it. There are two powerful forces. They are hitting you at exactly the same time. So what I would like to talk next about is I want to spend a moment on your brain, because for a lot of caregivers, this is the fear that keeps us all up at night. Am I losing my mind? And here's the truth. At chronically high levels, cortisol is neurotoxic. It's genuinely hard on brain tissue. It's reversible, but still, listen out. 3 things happen. The hippocampus, your center for memory and learning, can actually literally shrink under chronic stress. So memory and learning are the first casualties. That's the forgetting words, walking into a room and planking feeling. Then the prefrontal cortex, your decision-making center, gets suppressed. This is why by the end of a long caregiving day, you cannot decide what to make for dinner. That decision fatigue is also biological. So it's not a weakness, please hear that. And chronic stress drives neuroinflammation, which over time raises the risk of cognitive decline. But here's the most important thing on this slide. These changes are largely reversible with intervention. The brain is remarkably plastic. When we lower the cortisol load and give the brain what it needs, the hippocampus can recover volume. The fog can lift. It's a warning light, and warning lights can be turned off. So, how do you know if your body is waving a red flag? Well, let me give you 3 categories to check yourself against. As I read these, just quietly notice which ones ring true for you. First, well, the brain. Forgetting words, brain fog, not being able to focus. Feeling emotionally reactive, crying more easily, or snapping over small things. Second, the hormones. Worsening hot flashes, irregular cycles, loss of libido, and this is really for men and for women, the loss of libido as well as decreased muscle tone. Mood crashes, that's also for men and for women, that come out of nowhere. Third, energy. You wake up already exhausted. It feels like in the morning you haven't slept at all. Or you get that afternoon crash. Maybe in the morning it still feels okay, but like after 2 p.m., it's just over. if you have to rely on caffeine or sugar just to get you through the day. And then insomnia, or you're really bone tired at night, but then really you're unable to sleep. If you said yes to many of these, I would like you to treat this as useful information. Your body is basically communicating with you. It's asking for help. And the rest of the tonight is about how we can do that. What can we do to make this better? All right. Action steps. Let's start with protecting your brain. And there are 4 strategies. Number 1, sleep is non-negotiable. 7 or more hours of sleep per night protects your brain. It literally protects the size of your memory center. And I know you want to say, well, I have no time to sleep. I'm up with my loved one. I hear you. So we protect what sleep you can get fiercely. And then you can think about how you're going to do it. But I need you to stop treating sleep as the thing you sacrifice first. It's really the thing you have to protect first. It's really important. And it's also important when you go to bed. And that has to do with our circadian rhythm. So it's really important you go to bed prior to 11 p.m. So I have people telling me, yeah, doc, I go to bed at 2 a.m. and then I sleep until whatever, at 10. I'm like, nope, you're not going to go through the really restorative sleep cycles that your brain needs. So prior to 11 p.m., please. Number 2, movement that you can actually enjoy. So just 30 minutes a day increases a brain growth factor that helps brain cells thrive. And notice I said movement, and movement you enjoy. A walk with a friend counts, dancing in your kitchen counts. It doesn't have to be the gym. Number 3, omega-3 fatty acids. They are anti-inflammatory and neuroprotective. So you can think fatty fish, chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, algae oil, or a good quality supplement. Simple and powerful. Number 4, you need a stress circuit breaker. So here I recommend 5-minute resets throughout the day. These are basically exercises that turn on our parasympathicus tone, which is really important. And you can meditate, you can do mindfulness. There are all kind of things out there, but I know you're going to say, how do I have time to that? And I do understand. So there are small pauses throughout the day, and we're going to do an exercise at the end of this talk that stop cortisol from building and building. And a little later, we're going to do this together, and I'll show you how to do that. Now, hormones. This is my home territory, right? It's a lot about women. However, let me give you the things that might be really helpful for you to know. So if you're a younger perimenopausal or postmenopausal woman and you have severe brain fog, fatigue, insomnia, and have no risk factors for hormone replacement therapy, it can be tremendously helpful. It's not going to fix the underlying issues like the sleep deprivation and the cortisol. But I always say our female hormones, they are like fire extinguisher that help to keep things calm while we are trying to fix the underlying drivers. Because always remember that estrogen that we get for our reproductive years is really what keeps us going. It basically keeps our joint lubricated, it quenches inflammation, it keeps our brain going, it helps our insulin resistance. But this is really to keep us women reproducing, right? And once we get older, nature says, well, you don't need that anymore. But basically, then the things that we have been neglecting are catching up with us. It's not that we get elder or we crash once we enter menopause. That's not what it is. It's just the things that we have been neglecting are just showing their ugly face, and it's time for us to pay attention. All right. So for most women midlife, hormone therapy can be tremendously helpful, particularly for a certain time when you really need some help. It can help you with better sleep, better mood, better cognition, can protect your bones and your heart if you're a younger menopausal woman. It isn't right for everyone, and that's exactly the kind of individualized conversation that's worth having with your physician. But please don't rule it out based on fear, okay? It's for most women, the benefit outweighs the risks. So I'm already moving on from this very female topic. Second comes blood sugar stability. Directly supports hormonal balance. When your blood sugar is on a roller coaster, all your hormones are literally your cortisol, your sex hormones, your thyroid. So steady blood sugar is one of the most powerful hormonal tools you really have. And it's on your plate 3 times a day. If I have a patient coming to my office and they want hormone replacement therapy, the first thing I look is literally is their hemoglobin A1C, which is the average blood sugar over the last 3 months, because this is what directly drives hot flashes. And it, of course, worsens metabolic and cardiovascular health. So third, adaptogens and targeted nutrients can buffer the impact of cortisol. Adaptogens are herbs that basically shield the body from the effects of stress. Not forever, but it can be very helpful. So things like magnesium, for example. Magnesium is super important for our metabolism, but very important really for cognition, for brain health, for the body under stress. We need a lot of magnesium. The same applies for B vitamins. Used well, they help your body handle stress more gracefully. However, that is also best done with guidance. So, someone really finds the things that are really right for you, because otherwise you end up like many of my patients who come with a whole shopping bag full of random supplements. That's how I call it. And it's like really shooting arrows in the dark. And you never know if any of that actually does anything and if it's going to stick or just a waste of money. Fourth, prioritize greens, and protein. And I'm really emphasizing greens here because right now on social media, you have everyone talks about protein and more protein and protein. And the problem really is that people start to outcrowd the greens and the veggies because they are trying to eat so much protein. And then, of course, they think animal protein, which is inflammatory, very good animal protein, but in the right balance. So people eat a lot of protein, try to get everything in, and then our hunger decreases anyway as we get older. Digestion is often not so good. So then they eat a piece of animal protein and nothing else fits. And now that actually increases inflammation. So that's why I'm saying greens and veggies first, important for the bones. It's an important anti-inflammatory ingredient. It's super important for our gut microbiome, which is so important to protect everything from immune health to inflammation to neurotransmitters. And we know from studies that eating all type of greens and veggies, each of these increases the diversity of our gut microbiome, and that's what we want. On the other hand, you can eat every day a different type of animal meat. It's not going to do nothing good to your gut microbiome. So that's why I said 30 grams of protein like per meal. I think that is reasonable. Gets you like, 90 grams. And of course, if you are really lifting weights, if you do any of this, then that can be adjusted. But for most average women, I say 30 grams is reasonable. It's about the size of the palm of your hand. If, salmon or meat or whatever, so tofu. So that's something easy to remember. And then, of course, the fiber, which you get if you really eat your greens and veggies. Next slide. Okay, the non-negotiables in regard to energy restoration. All right, let's talk about energy. So I made these tiny because I know you don't have much time for a 2-hour wellness routine, but these are important. So there are 3 of them. First, morning light. 10 minutes of outdoor light within about 30 minutes of waking. That's it. That's resetting your circadian rhythm. That morning light resets your cortisol for the whole day. It tells your body it's daytime, so that later it can tell your body it's nighttime. So breakfast on the porch does count, and walking to get to the mail counts too. Told you I'm trying to make it easy. Second is the blood sugar. I have a hair that's tickling me. Second, blood sugar. So eat greens and protein first. So that why you basically you buffer the impact of carbohydrates, because you're basically creating a bed of fiber, vegetables, protein, and fat in your stomach before the carbohydrates hit it. So limit refined carbs. So limit refined carbs, carbohydrates, that is the bread, it's the pasta. But even, whole grain bread is gonna raise your blood sugar if you're becoming more insulin resistant. So just limit the carbs. Don't overdo it because our thyroid does need carbohydrates. But depending where you start out with your diet, I would start with the obvious sugars and white breads and starches. And then for the stable blood sugar, this is important. Hear it out. Never skip meals while you're caregiving. I know skipping meals feels efficient when you're busy, but it's not. It's throwing like gasoline on the cortisol fire because that really increases that stress that your body feels. I'm not saying nibble the entire day. I say have 3 meals a day that are spaced like 3 to 4 hours apart. Don't eat in between if you can. That's what your body wants. It wants to be fed, then the GI tract wants to rest, and then it wants to eat again. And then third, plan micro recovery. 5-minute breathing resets between caregiving tasks. Not at the end of the day when you're already depleted, but in between. And this can lower the cortisol immediately. So eating for resilience, not perfection. Now another word about food. And I want you to notice the title because it's the whole philosophy. Eating for resilience, not perfection. You're not going to eat perfectly because nobody does, and certainly not while caregiving. So let's aim for resilient, not flawless. Prioritize 3 things. Anti-inflammatory foods like fatty fish, leafy greens, berries, a lot of fiber, a little bit of protein at every meal for stable energy, and magnesium-rich foods, which are these are the dark leafy greens, like the cabbage and the collard greens, all of that. But also nuts, seeds, and even a little dark chocolate is magnesium-rich. And then minimize 3 things, which are the sugar and the refined carbs, which I have mentioned because they spike your cortisol. So basically, the blood sugar spikes and the insulin spikes are going to increase your cortisol. That's why we want to be careful with that. And then caffeine and alcohol, because even one glass of alcohol disrupts your sleep architecture. That deep restorative sleep you really cannot afford to lose. Caffeine is like many patients give me resistance. And I'm not saying you cannot have no coffee if you have a relaxing day with your friend on the porch. However, if you need coffee every day to get going on empty stomach best, this is really gonna mess with your cortisol rhythm, and it's actually affecting even your sleep at night. And I know people say, well, just don't drink it afternoon. It's not true. So it's really gonna set up your cortisol rhythm the wrong way for the entire day. So if you really think you can't get up in the morning without coffee, that's the best sign that you need to quit it for a while and keep it for special occasions. However, I don't want you to give you a rigid diet. I'm giving you a direction to lean in. Small upgrades, repeated often, always be the perfect plan that you give up 2 days later. All right, what can we do about these pesky hot flashes? So that's my favorite topic. How do we reduce these? Through food. So let me get specific about one symptom that plagues so many midlife women: hot flashes, driving us mad. However, what's on our plate has a real effect on that internal thermostat. And here are the food upgrades that will help. Again, stop the sugar, all of it, as best as you can. Reduce the simple carbohydrates and bring in more fruits and vegetables, more fiber again. Beans and legumes, really important to block some of the estrogen receptors during times when we have these high estrogen spikes. And flax and pumpkin seeds. Basically a whole foods approach. And why does it work? Because it hits 3 things at once. It calms inflammation, it stabilizes your insulin, and it helps regulate that thermostat that drives the flashes in the first place. So food isn't a substitute for everything else we've talked about, but it's a genuine lever, and it's one you control every day with every plate. And if all of that what I said feels like a lot to remember, here's one rule that I tell every patient. I call it the 80-20 plate rule, and you can use it starting with your next meal. So basically, picture your plate. 80% is dark leafy greens, non-starchy vegetables, seed, and legumes. And the other 20% is everything else. Your animal protein, I have nothing against it at all, your grains and your dairy. I love tofu particularly because tofu hits like both. It's protein and it's actually plant-based. It kind of belongs to the 80%. The same, edamame, like that green Japanese bean, it's a complete protein. So keep that in mind. And that's it. That's the whole system. When your plate looks like that, your blood sugar stays relatively stable. And by now, you know that stable blood sugar quietly supports your hormones, your energy, your brain, your mood, all at once. One simple picture, and you don't have to count a single thing. Okay, so I promised you my favorite tool, and this is it. That's it now here. I call it your secret weapon because it's free. It's invisible. No one around you even knows you're doing it, and it lowers your stress immediately. It's called the physiological sigh. So sigh is basically this thing we do like, or we do it like, and your body has built that actually in. We do that unconsciously throughout the day. It's something we do to get air out of all our small lung alveoli. So, but basically I'm going to do it loudly now. It's 2 inhales through your nose. You do one on top of the next, and then a slow exhale through your mouth. So you start like you take a normal breath and then you add one on top. So it's like, you can do that again. It's like, and that is the double inhale inflates the tiny sacs in your lungs, and the long exhale, it what actually signals your nervous system to let go and stand down. And that's it. So 2 breaths through your nose and one long exhale out through the mouth. We do it once more and then we move on. That's that. Your secret weapon. All right. Now that we talked about all our things we can do, now I want to give you a little insight into what functional medicine does a little different than conventional medicine. So everything I've given you so far, you can start tonight for free. And for a lot of you, those changes alone will make a real difference. But some of you have been doing all the right things and still feel terrible. And if that's you, I don't want you to leave here thinking that you failed. It means there's something deeper we haven't looked at yet. Which brings me to the philosophy behind how I practice. There's a question at the heart of functional medicine that I love. The question is, what is the underlying pathophysiology or biophysical imbalance in your body that causes your symptoms in the first place? So we're not asking what I can give you to quieten that symptom, like what medication can I give you or what procedure. We really want to understand what's underlying. And this is where more advanced testing comes in, because you really cannot fix what you don't know what it is. You can't see and you don't understand. And I'm going to get you through a couple of tests that I have found very helpful in my practice to give me exactly that insight, to help my midlife women apply same for men to help them through their fatigue and their tiredness. So first thing is a very a deep cardiometabolic profile. That's really where I look very extensive into your lipid profile, into inflammation markers, into a complete thyroid profile, not what your primary care physician does. I look a little deeper. I look into certain micronutrients and indirect markers of deficiency. Including a fasting insulin level, which is much more sensitive than a hemoglobin A1C for diagnosing blood sugar instabilities. And of course, I also check a hemoglobin A1C in addition to iron markers, all of that. So that is really important to get a much deeper look into what might be driving your symptoms. Then second is food sensitivity testing. And that's something most people don't realize. In midlife, your immune system really changes, a lot driven through cortisol pushes really, and hormone changes for us women. So foods you ate happily for decades can now quietly become triggers for inflammation, bloating, brain fog, joint pain even. And these reactions are delayed. So these are food sensitivities. They are not allergies. So that means you can react to them up to 3 to 7 days after you've eaten them. And that's why it's really important to connect the dots on your own. However, a low-grade reaction is driving inflammation and making your menopausal symptoms or other midlife symptoms worse. And the fact that stress and aging increases gut permeability and larger food proteins start slipping through and setting off really your immune system. And so the payoff of that is really real. When we identify and remove your reactive foods, so many of those mystery symptoms can clear up within a couple of weeks. Then my other favorite tool is a gut health test. I always tell patients your gut controls far more than digestion. It really drives our immune system. It produces neurotransmitters like serotonin, like our feel-good and happy hormone. It helps regulate our hormones, and it largely determines how much inflammation lives in our body. And this is a DNA-based stool analysis. It finds pathogens, parasites, and bacterial overgrowth that conventional tests miss entirely. It measures gut inflammation markers as well as leaky gut. So if the gut barrier is actually still working, how do we digest the food? Are we losing nutrients through it? So 80% of our immune system really lives in our gut. And once we fix the gut, everything downstream really improves and starts to change. This is a test that is really a good one for everyone who is stressed. So it's it's everything I said about cortisol tonight. That's really what gets tied in here. So standard hormone testing really gives us a snapshot, but a hormone assay together with a cortisol awakening response actually checks how do you metabolize your hormones. That is really important for women to really understand what's happening to our testosterone. Is it metabolized at all? Is it metabolized the good or the bad way? Is it led away from a testosterone? Are we producing more estrogen instead? And then it tells us really how do we metabolize our estrogen? Some of the estrogen metabolites, so the downstream products, are more estrogenic, so causing, for example, even breast tenderness, though they're more potent than the original hormone. And that really all depends how we metabolize that. However, the most important piece of that dried urine test of comprehensive hormones is that cortisol awakening response. That's nothing you can simulate with like a cortisol test at the doctor, which I think is completely useless for what we are trying to show, because we're not trying to show you don't have enough cortisol. We're trying to show it's a dysregulation. So the cortisol awakening response is something you do in the morning at home in your saliva. You basically, when the moment you pop your eyes open, you take the first test. We want to know what is your cortisol doing, and then you check after 30 minutes and 60 minutes. We want to see is it actually rising appropriately, and then does it come down gently towards the end of the day. And what it's really going to show us is either you are overreacting, you pop your eyes open and you're already in entire stress, and then at night you just crash. And then there are stages in the middle, and then the burnout stage is like the cortisol doesn't even rise in the morning anymore. These are the women who really wake up, they're already fatigued. And sometimes I see cortisol curves. I'm really looking at that person and I'm like, I don't even know how you're doing it. Like, how are you getting up in the morning? So, but this is really information, because this is where we in functional medicine, we know what to do. We know, then I know what to give you, how to support you. There are often lifestyle changes, nutrition changes, but there are also certain supplements that can be helpful to really get that cortisol system more resilient again. Then mitochondrial and micronutrient testing. So your cells need specific nutrients to make energy. And when they're depleted, no amount of sleep or caffeine will fix your fatigue. You can sleep 8 hours and still wake up empty. And that on top of the cortisol dysregulation. So, and this testing now looks really inside your cells, not just what's in your bloodstream. It really looks at deficiencies that ordinary blood tests miss completely, like really how much B vitamins do you need and which of these do you need? What is your CoQ10 doing? Your zinc, your magnesium. And what I like the most, it measures your oxidative stress and mitochondrial health. Again, this is not to give us like a doomsday news. It's about, oh, this is one of the reasons that's driving your fatigue. Let's really fix that. Um, then again, it assesses our mitochondria, which is our cellular energy factory. So if these are not working well because they don't have the building blocks or they are blocked up with oxidative stress, this is when you have brain fog, you can't think, you feel fatigued, you have inflammation. All these things, they grip into each other the entire time. One really is determined to the next one. And then now comes the more specified testing. That is really like the last pieces I use to really fit things together. So we live in an always increasing chemical environment, heavy metals, pesticide, plasticizers, microplastics, industrial chemicals, and they accumulate quietly and they disrupt hormones, brain function, and immunity. So heavy metals like lead and mercury damage the nervous system and can mimic hormonal patterns. Endocrine disruptors, the BPAs and phthalates and plastics interfere directly with our estrogens, with the thyroid and cortisol receptors. And mycotoxins from mold exposure can cause fatigue and brain fog that look exactly like burnout. And for mold exposure, I see that a lot. We get it a lot through food. Actually, nuts seems to be a big thing, even the organic ones. So you don't need really water damage in your house. Mold creeps up on you before you know it. So again, but how we identify that, there are targeted protocols to basically reduce the toxic load and get rid of these. And then the last thing, genetic testing for prevention. I always say it this way: your genes are not your destiny, but they are like your roadmap. Knowing your vulnerabilities lets us intervene decades before disease ever develops. So I look at genes that affect detoxification, the mood, heart disease risk, but also your metabolism, how you build muscle, how you use your nutrients, how do you methylate, how do you get rid of toxins, where do you need help. So it basically helps us to build a protective plan. And I think that is really some of the most powerful information. All right, coming to an end. Now, I've given you a lot tonight, and I want to be clear. You do not need a single test to start feeling better. The sleep, the light, the right stuff on your plate, the breathing, you begin there tomorrow morning. But if you're someone who's been doing everything right and still feels like something is off, and you want to actually find out what's going on inside, that's what I do. There's the QR code on the screen. It'll take you to a health questionnaire. And after that, you can book a 40-minute strategy call with me if that's something you're interested in. And then we're really going to talk about your goals and whether any of this deeper testing is right for you. So, and if you're not ready for a call, but you like to keep learning, I'd love to stay connected. Yeah, that's my newsletter. I have bi-weekly insights on menopause, gut health, metabolic resilience, and thriving in midlife. It's science-based, it's practical, and I promise there is no fluff. So I'm coming to the end, and I want you to leave with this, with one thought. And if you remember nothing else from tonight, please remember this. You spend your days making sure the person you love gets their medication, their appointments, their meals, their dignity, and their care. You are extraordinary at it. But somewhere in all of that, you quietly moved yourself to the very bottom of the list. But you deserve the same care you give everyone else. Not what's left over, and not someday, but today. And filling your own cup isn't selfish. It's the only way you can keep pouring for the person who really needs you and who you love. So thank you so much for being here tonight with me.
Oh, thank you so much. That was such a great presentation. I'm really happy that we recorded it. And for everyone, I'm going to have this recording up on the MAPS website by Friday. So I'm going to go back through this and I'm going to share a lot of this with my wife because this was like really what great material. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope, I was like, was it very women-centered? So I apologize to all the men. This
No,
really
oh my
applies to
gosh.
all of you. Even my slides were a little, female-centered. This applies to all of us. Yes.
It was great. It was really good. I liked it. Yeah. Thank you. I wanted to let everyone know we have questions. We have a few questions already pre-submitted, and if you have questions still, you can add them to the chat or the Q&A. But I will go ahead and
Ooh, let's do the
go.
questions.
Yeah. So here we go. I'll go to my first question here. Um, my partner has always preferred to be home, but with PD, he will not go out much, only with pressure. He does not yet need care per se, but I need more of a social life and would love to travel and now that I'm retired. I hate to leave him home alone. I'm struggling to do this. I've dreamed of doing, but not alone. Uh, how to balance our need? How should I balance my needs?
Mhm. And that is really a question that is not even PD specific. I hear this from many of my midlife patients, just so you know. This is, it's it's a difficult question. It's about balance. I would think it's about boundaries, right? It's about, again, it's about your own cup. If your partner doesn't want to go out and it doesn't make it happy, it's difficult for you to get him there and you're exhausted until you have convinced him, then give yourself permission to find something you like to do yourself. Get someone, a friend, or join a group. Give yourself that permission. And if your partner or your husband needs care or someone to watch him, then arrange that. But it sounds like he actually is still okay to be alone. You just feel bad. This is the piece I wanted to tell you people out there. Don't feel bad. If you feel better, it's also better for your loved one. So it's okay.
All right. The next question is it common for a person with Parkinson's to have a reduced sex drive? I noticed a reduction right after DBS surgery.
What is the DBS surgery? Oh, the brain. Okay. Yes. So again, I'm not the Parkinson specialist. I'm the gynecologist. However, I can tell you our libido, men and women, is the first thing that goes away in midlife. It's very finicky because it's basically that extra that nature gives us, right? Like the right and the privilege to reproduce. The moment, and that you don't have to be midlife to, I've hundreds of patients, they are much younger and they have stress. The first thing that goes away is the libido. So very sensitive to stress, to many medications. Surgery is stress. Again, I'm not familiar with that type of brain surgery, but it sounds like, well, our sex hormones, they are the stimulation for production comes actually from the hypothalamus, so in the brain. So I would say that can definitely, interfere. However, again, there are so many things that we have to tackle in midlife. Um, I think it's something to talk to your physician about. Um, to see, I would say, what things does your partner enjoy in terms of sexual activity? Is it more like an erectile dysfunction problem at this time, or is it really just libido? Are there medications he would be safe to take? I don't want to say because I'm not sure, what these interferences is, but well, there's always testosterone. There is sildenafil, so there are really little helpers out there. And I think anything that makes you enjoy that partnership with your loved one, even, while becoming more a caretaker. Everything is fair game, if you ask me. Make it count, make it nice.
Right. Next question is, as I get older, I forget many things quickly. This creates much frustration with my partner. Need some advice on this matter will go a long way. Thank you.
Well, that's a big question because yes, we can say, well, you can try some ginkgo supplements, but we don't really understand what is underlying. There could be 1,000 things. It could be the stress that person might not be sleeping. They might, be exposed to environmental toxin. They might just be completely stressed. And as they address the stress and the blood sugar, that brain piece might become better. So I would advise really listen to what I said today, but very important, what I probably didn't stress enough. We call Alzheimer, yes, dementia and Alzheimer, we call if unofficially the third diabetes, right? So that diabetes 1 and 2. So the third diabetes, because we know the terrible effects that unstable blood sugars have on the brain. So again, first, every patient that comes, the first thing I look at their average blood sugar actually. So many things for this person really to think about and go back to my talk and work themselves through every step.
All right. And the last question that I have here, spouse was diagnosed with early onset PD 2 years ago. I get one afternoon off per week to either visit a friend or just be free agent for a couple of hours. It's hard to actually relax and enjoy this off time. Guilt for not being there with the spouse is very strong. How else should I relax?
Fill your own cup and don't feel guilty about it. It's so important. I don't know why we all have that guilt. Find something that you really enjoy and really try to always tell yourself that you need this time to actually be able to continue doing that work. And if you're good and you have energy, this is when your spouse is really going to be benefiting. So this is the time when you refill your cup. Don't feel bad about it.
Nice. All right. Any other questions from the group tonight? And haven't seen any come through yet. So yeah, I guess that's all the questions we have for tonight. And again, I'd like to remind everyone that this is being recorded and we'll have it up on the website. And again, wonderful presentation. That was really great, learning all that. So
Well,
thank you
thank you. I learned a lot about Parkinson's too, so it was good.
very much.
And I seem to be able to talk again. So
Yay, Judy's back.
yay, yay. So
You want to give your introduction now? What about that?
I just want to say thank you. I mean, it was one of the most interesting presentations we've had.
It
And
was.
yeah, it really was. I'm my brain is moving overtime. I'm on all kinds of levels. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I don't know what else to say except thanks. And I would suspect that we're going to have a lot of people signing on just to see the recording
All
once
right.
it's
Well, it was
so
all my pleasure. Thanks so much.
thank you. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.